It's sports time, and when it's time for sports, it's time for the Pressbox Chatter Show, your ultimate in-game for all things sports, all local. Each week, our guys are bringing you exclusive high school game content, in-depth insights, thrilling recaps, exciting previews, and taking you inside the pivotal plays of all of your favorite local high school teams like never before. So turn up those speakers, because it's no limits, no excuses. It's the Pressbox Chatter Show on WCLN.
Good evening, everyone. Jeff Sobel here. And it's the second incarnation of Pressbox Chatter. I'm here joined alongside this week again by Brant Young, sports director of the Sampson Independent, and the sports voice of Dark Horse Football, Jonathan Griffin. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us again for week 2.
Thanks for having us, as always.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
The Pressbox Chatter is brought to you by Crumpler Plastic, Sampson Regional Orthopedic, and the Sampson Independent. And for the Sampson Independent, go to ClintonNC.com to see the video each week from Pressbox Chatter. Now, last week on our inaugural show, we talked about, had to kind of play catch-up. Football was 2 weeks in, soccer, volleyball, some of the other sports were 3 weeks in, so we had to kind of play catch-up with everything. Now, from here on out, what we'll do is recap last week's results and then kind of give what's up ahead for each team in each sport. And so this week we'll start out with, and also this week in the second segment, by the way, we're going to have an interview. Coach Brad Spell, athletic director at Clinton High School, and Travis Pate, athletic director at West Bladen High School. Got a very excellent interview with them. We're talking about realignment and NIL, two hot-button topics. Realignment coming up this year with the conferences and the schools, and NIL, the topic that's been in the news recently with high school athletes in North Carolina and the State Board of Education. We'll start out this week. We're going to head to golf first. And last week, Midway, Hopton, and Clinton, actually 2 weeks ago, Midway, Hopton, and Clinton got together, and Clinton won. Midway was second, Hopton was third. Last week when they played, well, they switched things around. Hopton won with a score of 167, Midway 180, and Clinton 181. And for Hopton, medalist was Carly Brooke Wade. She had a 54. Katie Britt came in next with a 55. For Midway, it was Karina Richards with a 57 and Maya Gwynn with a 61. And then for the Dark Horses, Ella Rice had a 57 and Anna Levitt had a 61. The Southeastern Athletic Conference, of which Midway and Clinton are members, will have their first conference golf match tomorrow at Sandy Ridge. That'll be at 3 o'clock. Hopton will travel to East Columbus for a match, and that will be at 3:30. We'll transition next to football, and the first 2 weeks of the football season, the 8 teams we cover, if they weren't playing each other, our out-of-conference record was a not very good 3-9. That's a .250 win percentage. Last week, that kind of ticked up a little bit. The teams were 4-4 non-conference, and we'll start with Lakewood, the lone remaining undefeated team. They won last week, although it was a little more difficult than what you kind of anticipated, a 43-28 victory over Lejeune.
The Devil Pup Saville almost got them. You and I were up there in the press box calling the Clinton game Friday, and we were keeping a close eye on that one because Lejeune likes to throw it around, and boy, did they ever. Lejeune passing their senior quarterback 37 of 59 for 418 yards for 5 touchdowns. Lakewood's starting quarterback did not play, however, so they had a freshman, Reed Ammons, that played. He was 7 of 9 passing with 91 yards. He had 5 rushes for 37 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their sophomore running back, Calvin Lacewell, 23 rushes, 229 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then senior Chris Carr, 5 carries for 59 yards and a touchdown. Nakai Owens was everywhere on defense. Aside from running the ball, 6 carries for 55 yards, he had 14 tackles. And Lakewood as a team had 380 yards rushing. But coming out, beat the Devil Pups. Their upcoming game next week, they're really setting the stage for that one because they were able to get a win, and so was the opponent that they're going to be playing in the Midway Raiders.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the best games this county will see all season long. One thing to note about Lakewood, Calvin Lacewell rushed for almost 1,000 yards last year as a freshman. I did the math. He's looking at almost 1,500 yards this season if he keeps on pace with that and everything. The nice thing about Lakewood is that they have a two-headed monster in the backfield. If Godbold is healthy, he can throw the ball if needed, but they just really haven't had to do so yet. So I think if they get into a situation where they need to pass this upcoming week, they can do it. So that's going to be a fun game to watch.
And there wasn't And there wasn't like any type of reason. I mean, we don't know why Godbold was out because obviously he played 2 weeks before in the Jamboree and looked pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything my way. I also haven't inquired, if that helps.
Yeah.
But no, he just didn't play for some reason. Reed Ammons has has the same amount of completions as him with one more attempt on the season.
And he's a freshman, so cupboard's not too bare there for Coach.
But one thing you mentioned too, Godbold has been more of a running threat this year, and as opposed to last year, which opens up things too. Because again, with his good size and Lakewood spreading the field like they are, it just gives you another thing you have to account for if you're on defense.
Yeah, and we were talking about Midway. So Midway got the win. They were up 21-0, held on to the 29-22 win. Who were they playing Friday?
North Johnston. Yeah, we saw North Johnston. North Johnston's always a scrappy team, and
is that the one that's got like the Buckeye type helmets?
That's the one where we saw last year. We went to Hopton on our open week, and it was Hopton and North Johnston, and they went back and forth.
Okay,
all that,
yeah.
And so North Johnston always
we'd still be there if that game was going. So Midway, Kamari McNeil, 3 rushes for 55 yards for the Raiders, had an 80-yard punt return for a touchdown and a 65-yard punt return for a touchdown. So it sounds like North Johnston's got to work on their punt coverage. But Midway, that was where
the second one set up a 65-yarder set up a short field for him for offense. So,
sorry about that.
Yeah,
sorry about that. But still, got to work on that punt coverage.
Yeah. Now, one thing, Midway defensively gave up 189 yards rushing to Lakewood. And when you start talking about, gave up 189 yards rushing to North Johnston. And you talk about Lakewood now coming in with, like you said, your two-headed monster of 11 rushers. That'll be something there. Can Midway hold up run defense against Lakewood? The other thing is, can Midway then, obviously Lakewood needs to work on the pass defense. Last week, Calvin, the quarterback for Midway Williams, was, I think, 3 of 10 throwing. Is that something they can exploit for Midway? One thing to say too, also, Lakewood's non-conference schedule right now they're 0-6. The teams they've played, not the strongest. So here's their first real challenge. So people are always going to mention how your non-conference isn't very good. Well, for Lakewood, here's a chance to show how good they are. Midway. Obviously, they played Keenan, who was 3-0. They didn't do well against Keenan, but Keenan is 3-0, and their other teams they have played of all North Johnston's 1-2 now, and Hopton's 1-2.
Keenan got the win over Clinton's next opponent, which would be Whiteville this upcoming Friday. But your Sampson Independent game of the week is Midway at Lakewood this upcoming Friday, correct?
Yeah, and funny part about that is I picked that before the season, not knowing what either of these two teams looked like. So I don't know if it was premonition or what, but yeah, that's the game of the week this week.
You listened to the Jamboree where I was high on Lakewood and Midway in our preseason picks because we wanted to be able to get a meal paid for by Ron over there, who still owes us one from last year with Savile and I. But
so that should be good. See, two teams. That's one of those games that a win really goes a long way. It's not in conference, I know, but a win goes a long way to making it an excellent season.
Should be a big gate.
And we haven't even mentioned that it's Barrett Sloan's return game at Lakewood.
That's an interesting under like another storyline there. Moving on to Harrell's. Harrell's got a big win Friday night over Wake Prep Academy, 49-6, where junior Reed Strickland was 3 of 5 passing. You actually said he threw 2 touchdown passes. That's not a lot of passing goes on down there in Harrell's, but they usually don't have to do it to win. This time they did it, and it allowed them to win when he was 3 of 5 for 37 and 2 touchdowns. They've got a game coming up Friday night. They're 2-1 matched up.
Going to Mount Zion Academy.
Yeah.
Now, last 2 weeks too, Harrell's they gave up 7 points in a win over Wayne, and they gave up 6 last week, and that was a kickoff return. So last 2 weeks, 13 points defensively, and then the offense. Big thing I heard in the first game was turnovers. They fumbled 2 punts. I think they had a bad snap on a punt as well too, that gave the Covenant Day short fields. So last 2 weeks, only 13 points defensively. They've kind of shorn things up turnover-wise. And their rushing attack, and one thing about them now, it's a junior, 2 juniors, a sophomore, and a freshman right now, who was the big rushers last week. Jamani Newton, 15 rushes, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Jakeshi Brunson, 7 for 52 and a touchdown. Both those juniors. Demetrius Jones, 5 rushes, 39 yards, and 2 TDs. And Jared Miller, 7 for 59 and 1 TD, and he's a freshman.
Hey.
Wing T formation that they run down there. It gives you a lot of. You got those runners. You got a lot of options.
I was going to say, when you got a lot of guys that run the ball and run with success, getting touchdowns like this, your offensive line. Shout out to the big uglies down in the trenches. You got to have a pretty good offensive line when you're able to run the ball so much as you do. So
yeah, and I got a clip of one of their touchdowns, one of their passing touchdowns at least, and this kid channeled his inner Randy Moss. It was I
went up to go get it, huh?
He went over the guys, fought through defensive pass interference on 2 of their players. A flag was thrown, and he just went over top of them and snagged that ball out of the air. So I would love to see Harrell's develop a passing game, but if history tells the story, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, well.
And again, they'll be at Mount Zion Academy this Friday.
Where's Mount Zion?
Up in Raleigh.
Up in Raleigh,
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And our last team that won last week, Hopton, after scoring 12 points through 10 quarters and being down 6-2 to East Columbus at halftime. Hopton offense got to go in the second half to beat the Gators 23-12, and that's their first win of the year. They are now 1-2 on the season.
Yep.
And again, a lot of parts to replace last year for Hopton. It's just kind of maybe taking a while to gel. They'll have another chance to gel this week as they're off to Spring Creek. Spring Creek is 0-1. They played Lakewood the first week of the season and got beat 60-6. They have not played since. They have 2 back-to-back bye weeks.
Yeah, if anybody's wondering why that is, Spring Creek went independent when they dropped out of Clinton's conference. That was the SAC 7 a couple years ago, right, and went independent. And so sometimes it's hard to get.
They're back, though. They're back in the conference with Goldsboro and Eastern
They are
Wayne
back in the conference. I did not realize that.
Now, yeah.
Okay,
They
cool.
I just had 2 of them. I thought maybe they had Jones scheduled in there because Jones dropped to 8-man, and that left like a hole in Union schedule, for example, but that's not the case. Anyway, Spring Creek's lost 16 in a row. Their last win was September 16th, 2 years ago, a 52-50 triple overtime win over Union.
Maybe they should play 8-man.
One thing to note about them, in their game against Lakewood, they got scored on every way possible. Offense, defense, and special teams, Lakewood scored on them. So if you want to talk about punt return coverage, Spring Creek might want to take a lesson out of your book on that one.
Sure they've got it.
One of my
been a struggle up there.
One of my more fond memories of this, and I don't mean this to be joking, but we went it down there and we called a game at Spring Creek, and I'd always heard of announcers doing this, but the PA announcer, while we're on the air broadcasting for the Dark Horses, he's doing the play-by-play for Spring Creek over the PA system. And I remember getting a recording of that, and I thought it was just so funny because I had never heard anybody do that before. But he was just, good backwoods people, and they were having a good time, just came out and support the team, even though they've struggled so many years. But I thought it was funny.
We'll travel into go over our losses then from last week. We'll start in Bladen County. East Bladen lost a 54-27 decision to Ashley, and they was never really in that game at all. Drops East Bladen to 1-2 on the year, and East Bladen gave up 516 total yards to Ashley. And Jalen Brewington rushed for 24 times for 310 yards and 5 TDs for Ashley. And Bladen faces the unenviable situation this week. They're traveling to 3-0 James Keenan.
Oh, right now that's going to be tough. You look at West Bladen stayed in Bladen County, Salvo. West Bladen lost 42-8 to West Columbus. They were only down 16-8 at halftime. You could do the math after that because my calculator's not available. But I'm telling you, it was not a pretty second half. Senior Luke Pate had 5 receptions, 46 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 tackles. Wonder if Luke Pate is related to Coach Pate. That'll be talking to us a little bit coming up in the next segment. You wonder if that junior Marion Brown had 7 tackles and a sack, and Wendell Way had 2 sacks. They only had, though, 104 yards of total offense.
And they fall to 0-3, and they host 0-2 East Columbus this Friday. And the team is kind of in a similar boat, just in terms of youth, new coach. And then similar situations, close at half, but the second half got away from them. The Dark Horses fell to 0-3. Clinton lost to Lumberton this past Friday, 41-0. Should have been 7-0 at half, and a bad punt return or bad catch on the punt. Let Lumberton score right before the half. So similar in terms of West Bladen being a close at first half, the second half got away from, and the Horses now go to 0-3, and another team struggling offensively.
Yeah, I had with the coach's show last night with Coach Johnny Boykin, and he was just talking about how he said each week, he said, I can tell we're getting better and better in practice. We got to start building up confidence, and Clinton's just got to find a way to score. I mean, we're through 3 games now, and Clinton hadn't scored a touchdown yet, and I can't imagine the celebration that's going to happen when they finally cross the goal line. But everybody alike is going to celebrate, but. They're not quitting though. They're going out every week and they're playing. And he even mentioned last night, they've made even more changes on the offensive line of rotating players. They're trying to find the best cohesive unit that can give them the best opportunity to be able to run the ball and block. So.
Well, that's the purpose of these games here, is to find out who can play what and get your team the best prep you can in order to, when you start conference play.
Yeah, and
for all the Bladen schools and the Sampson schools, which is still a couple weeks away because they're all in 16
and
conferences.
it's not a murderer's row of conference either. I mean, with Fairmont struggling, West Bladen struggling, I mean, I don't know about Red Springs, but Red Springs is typically, so I mean, Midway will end up being one of the big games. I think that's the homecoming game this year.
No, that's at Midway this year.
It's at Midway this year.
Midway.
Okay, well, that'll be their homecoming then. But
speaking of homecoming, go ahead, Brant.
Just one thing to note for Clinton this week, they're without Demarius Pugh. He was ejected during the game for that fight. I think the referees missed a couple ejections on that one. I had a
we're right there with you on that.
Yeah, I was down on the sidelines and ran up to it to see who was going to get ejected, and I kept close ear on it. I actually thought it was, because they called it on number 5. I thought they ejected number 5 from Lumberton, who was Reggie Bush, and I was like, oh, they might mount a comeback now that Reggie Bush is out of the game.
And that is his real name.
Yeah,
I used that line that you.
Yeah, that is his real name.
Yeah.
But no, they're without Demarius Pugh, but their offensive line is definitely struggling. But I think if they shore that up, that's a much better ball team now. If they get that all working together.
And there's signs, like Coach Boykin said, and you mentioned in the show yesterday. It's just the consistency is the big thing that's just lacking offensively and defensively. Lastly, it is homecoming at Union this week, as they'll host 2-1 South Columbus. But Union last week fell to 0-3, a 67-0 loss to Pender. Pender's now 2-0. Pender beat Lejeune, who Lakewood struggled with. Pender beat Lejeune 74-7 in week 1. So Union this week at 0-3 will be hosting South Columbus homecoming down at Union.
Pender is playing Wallace. And that game has been moved to Thursday night, by the way, too. So, Sava wants to go catch that game, and
that's probably not going to happen. It's Pressbox Chatter. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Brought to you by Crumpler Plastics, Sampson Regional Orthopedic, and the Sampson Independent. Go to ClintonNC.com to see the video each week from Pressbox Chatter. We'll go to our first break. We'll come back with an interview with AD Travis Pate and AD Brad Spell talking about realignment and NIL. It's next here on Pressbox Chatter.
The Pressbox Chatter brought to you in part by Crumpler Plastic Pipe Incorporated, agricultural drain systems, constructed wetlands, septic sewer drain pipes. For more information, call 910-525-4046 or log on to the website www.cpp-pipe.com.
Keep going. Welcome back to Pressbox Chatter, sponsored by Crumpler Plastic in Roseboro and the Sampson Independent. For our interview segment today, we have two of the top coaches in their respected sport, not just in this area, but the whole state of North Carolina. We have Travis Pate, head men's basketball coach at West Bladen, and Brad Spell, head men's soccer coach at Clinton High. Welcome, gentlemen, and thanks for coming on the show.
What's going on?
Thanks for having us.
They're not here to be interviewed about their sport they coach. That will probably be coming later. I have both here to get their insight on a couple important topics for high school athletics as it relates to this other job these gentlemen have that takes up maybe just a little bit of their time. And that's their job as athletic directors for their high schools. Coach Pate is in his 7th year as AD, and Coach Spell, it's your 5th year, correct? 6th year. I don't want to short you now. It's a tough enough job as it is. You don't have to get shorted a year. I want to discuss both of you, the issues of realignment and NIL. First, we'll do realignment. For ADs and coaches, this is very important, but for the casual high school fan, maybe this doesn't carry much weight, but for those who go to games and watch their children or grandchildren, they may wonder starting next year why they're traveling to certain schools and not going to schools they have been going to. So, Coach Pate, we'll start with you. Just explain, in layman's terms, what is realignment?
Realignment is a process that the association goes through every 4 years, and the purpose of it is obviously schools get smaller and bigger, and they want to make sure everybody's on a level playing field. Normally it's based on enrollment. Last time it was not, and it will be this time. It's kind of a tense time for ADs because we're trying to figure out where we're going to be, but it's something we have to do.
Coach Spell, the upcoming changes, and you talk about grouping schools. Currently, how many classifications are there, and how many will there be upcoming now with the new realignment?
Right now there's 4 classifications, and in the new realignment, for the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. They've come up with, looks like it's going to be 8 classifications coming up. I guess we'll know a lot more probably around November, December.
That's good. How's this going to affect, Coach Bell, how's this going to affect the playoffs then? Because, right now we have, football has 6 rounds. I think the other sports have 6 games. Basketball and soccer have 6 rounds also. How's this going to affect playoffs then starting next year?
Well, kind of, talking with some other ADs and kind of going back and forth and listening to some information with Q Tucker, the commissioner of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. They've kind of going back and forth with it a little bit. And to me, when you I guess the word might not be water it down, but I guess you are when you go to 8 classifications. You're definitely not going to have as many rounds. So it looks to me like it's going to drop a round off. So instead of playing your state championship in the 6th round, now the 5th round will be the state championship.
With 8 classifications though and 5 rounds, there'll still be a lot of teams. Pretty much about everybody's going to make playoffs.
Correct. I don't. I'm not a big fan of that. I think you need to earn making the state playoffs, and a lot of ADs differ on that. Everybody's got their opinion on that, but you win a conference championship, you definitely need to be in the playoffs. I mean, you got above a 500 record, you need to be in the playoffs. But some of these teams, and it doesn't matter what sport it is, if it's football, if it's soccer, if it's basketball, and you got 3 or 4 wins and you're making the playoffs,
I'm not a big fan of that just because, have you really earned that right?
Coach,
go
ahead, Coach Pate.
So from what I've seen, 1A is going to be looking at 16 teams in the playoffs, at least for football. I don't know what it'll be for the other sports. And then you're going to have 8A there's going to be 32 teams in 8A. So basically you're going to have around 60 teams in each classification. So for the rest of the classifications, like Brad said, you're probably looking at 5 rounds. 32 teams will get in for football and all other sports. So
now that big classification of 32 teams, that's the whole state, correct, Coach Pate?
It is. So when they start out, they're going to take the 32 highest ADMs, number of students and number of kids in the school, and they will have, they'll call it the Big 8, and there'll be 32. That's it. There'll be no more than that. And then after that, you're going to flip down, and they'll take, there's roughly 440 schools in the association right now. So you take those 32 out and divide the rest of them by 7, and you'll come up with what you're going to have. Which will be, I'm sorry, I was wrong. You're looking at between 55 and 58 teams in each classification. So it'll actually, to be honest, will really mirror what we have now as far as percentage, except for the 8A. 2A through 7A is going to really mirror what we have right now as far as the percentage of teams that are making it.
What's the timeline, Coach Pate, for all this? Like when will you find out what conferences you're going to be in and things like that?
So that's a great question. In the past, they gave us more information. Right now, we're supposed to know who's going to be in which classification by the middle of September. And supposedly, in the past, you could go and say, hey, we're listed as 2A, we want to go down, or we're listed as 2A, we want to go up, which we've had happen quite a bit. Supposedly, that's not going to be the case. You can't petition the state. So we're going to know middle of September, and then I'm like Brad. The first draft's probably going to come out here in November, and normally everything's finished by December. I hope that's going to be the case here, but there's going to be a lot of moving parts because they won't be able to put just 2 classifications more than likely in every conference. You're probably looking that they're willing to do as many as 3 classifications in a conference, so it's definitely going to change some things.
That was going to be my next question then. How, with 8 classifications, you can't have just a 2A or a 3A or a 4. There's not that many schools around. So is this going to be based on what you have around you? It could be a 2A, 3A combination. It could be a 4A, 5A. How's that going? I'll go to Coach Bell first. How's that going to work exactly?
Well, once again, talking to some individuals, one thing's probably going to change a lot is the possibility you're going to be traveling further for these non-conference games. And I don't think there's going to be any conference that's not going to be split conferences. I mean, they've even talked about possibly, like you mentioned, a 2A, 3A, and a 4A being in a conference. Now, you wouldn't be playing those teams when you play in the state championship But there's a good chance. I've even heard about 5A, 6A, all the way up to 8A. So, you're going to have a lot of split conferences now, and travel could be an issue that's not as, in effect right now, more travel time.
All right, Coach Pate, anything on that with the split conferences?
I'm not sure how I'm sure, for example, like in our area, I'm sure what's going to happen is we're going to end up with 3 classifications in a conference. I don't know, except I don't think they're going to, when they say 3 classifications, I don't see you getting like a 7A and then a 5A and a 4A. I think they'll be linked. You know what I mean? I don't see them skipping classifications to put you in the league. I do agree with. I don't think it's going to affect us in our area quite as bad in our range. I jotted down the ADMs for this past year, and we're all not. Us and Clinton, West Bladen and Clinton might not be in the same classification, but there's still a good chance we could be in the same league. So that's it's going to be interesting to see how they do it. In South Carolina, they do a region. Instead of conferences, they do regions, and you have to play so many teams within that region. I don't think we'll get that, but I basically think they're going to try and, basically kind of keep the same type of leagues we've been having, if you will.
Well, it'll be, of course, to try to do the conferences or the classifications, you try to get schools that are reasonably close together. With 8, again, you can have a 4A, 5A, 6A league, let's say. Will that makeup of those schools be in greater disparity, you think, than now, or is it going to be pretty much the same?
No, I don't think it'll be great. Like, for instance, you look at our league right now. You just look at our league, and, gosh, I jotted those down. So we're at 670 or so. That's what we were last year. St. Paul's last year was 1,100. This year, their AD told us at the meeting the other day, they're at 1,400. So they're twice our size. I think, what are y'all running, Brad, about 800 right now?
We're about I think we're around that 840 range right now. So right now, if looking at the classifications, we're pretty much thinking we're probably going to be a 4A.
So I don't know that there's going to be as big a disparity. I don't think it's not going to be much different than what it is now, to be honest, is what I think as far as who you're playing within that range. It's just the thing that'll be more fair, especially for football. I don't know how much it is for like basketball. Probably it's more fair for soccer, more fair for football as far as number of athletes on the field is now, though. I think it'll be a more fair playing field because you will be closer to ADMs. Like again, St. Paul's 2A, and they're 1,100 to 1,400 kids, and here we are at half their size. I don't see the fairness of that either.
That's a good point. I'm going to ask both of you these questions. Coach Spell, I'll ask you this one first. If you're the final decision maker, you're the final kingpin here in all this, how many classifications would you have had?
That's a good question. I've kind of pondered it a little bit, and I don't know. I was fine with 4, but once again, maybe 6, get it up to 6. I think once again, when you get it up to 8, and you're kind of, once again, you're trying to get everybody in the playoffs and trying to make everybody happy. And, we're in this generation now, that everybody's supposed to get a trophy. I mean, you got to earn it, I think. And, it's great. Football, you've heard in the past, football used to go to AA, single A, AA, and now you're pretty much doing that with all sports. And you're gonna be watering it down, and teams, pretty much everybody's gonna be in the playoffs. So, I looked at the six classifications might have been a good opportunity for that.
Coach Pate?
Me and Brad are like-minded in a lot of ways. I differ here. Whenever I was in school in the mid-'90s, and you had anywhere from 68 to 72 schools in the classification, okay? And we didn't have as many rounds in the playoffs at that time. Football, you were at 32, if you remember. And basketball, everything else, you were at 48. So now you go and look now, and the last few years, we're looking at 100 plus in each classification. And so, I don't know that you're going to be looking at the same percentage-wise. If you're looking at 58 schools and 32 getting in, it's not terrible, I don't think. What I wish they would do is they would, out of those 8, though, I wish they would make a private school and charter school classification.
I agree with that 100%.
I just don't think it's fair. They're playing by different rules than we are. They can say what they want to, but it's just not fair. And I think that would help, especially look at, hey, Patty Evers would have won 2 state championships, but she was playing against people playing with different rules.
But she was the public school state champion.
I remember that was her quote that one year. Yep.
Yes, I agree, Brad. I think they should hang a banner or 2 banners in her gym saying that, to be honest. So I would be fine with 8. I really would.
Okay. Lastly, for this, what's the ideal number of schools for a conference? What Coach Pate, what do you like ideally for a number of schools in a conference?
So I've been in the league with 10. I've been in the league now with 6. 8 is the perfect number. You look at football with 10 games, it gives you 7 conference games, it gives you 3 non-conference. Basketball, it gives you 14. You still have a lot of play in your schedule. You don't have to worry about bye weeks. I hate that odd number. 7's not a good deal to me either, because with a bye week in the middle of your season. And then looking at basketball, we have a scheduling nightmare. We don't have start our conference too well after everybody else. So 8, I hope and pray that we're in an 8-team league when this new realignment comes out.
Brad?
Yeah, I'm the same with you. I almost maybe 16-team conference. No, like the ACC. Nah, but I would say 8. I'm good with 8 too. I think 6 is tough to find non-conference schedule, and I would probably prefer 10 over 6. But I think 8's the perfect number.
All right, we could talk about the charter school and private school issue. It'd be another 15, 20 minutes. Let's quickly move on to our second topic, and that's NIL, name, image, and likeness. And issues come up here recently because Faison Brandon from Grimsley is now suing the state school board because he could not get NIL in the public school. 38 states and D.C. has NIL. So I asked both of you these questions. Coach Pate, I'll start with you first. What do you see happening with NIL in North Carolina?
Good or bad, I think it's going to be approved. Actually, the association was going to approve it before the state legislature took over, and they didn't allow us to do it. And lo and behold, we've seen here in the last couple of weeks, and again, I'm a basketball guy, so that's where I look toward. But Keandre Harris, who was at Reidsville, big-time football and basketball player, he left for a private school. And he was blunt in saying he was going to a private school because he was able to get NIL dollars. Trent Stanhauer of Lake Norman, he's a Clemson commit. He's going to IMG. And again, it was hinted very strongly that the reason was he was going to be able to benefit financially. So I think there's going to be enough pressure. And I honestly, I don't think the legislature can fight it because everybody has said, this is something that we're going to. So I think it's going to be approved, if not now, in the next year or 2.
All right, Brad?
I'm not a big fan of it. I think, once again, it kind of deteriorates the game. You've seen it at the college level now. I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. If I'm a 5-star player, I'm like, yeah, show me the money. I can totally understand that as an athlete, but as a fan of watching college sports, I don't even know who's on the team anymore. I mean, these kids are transferring all the time because they're not, NIL's going to be another way where they can transfer and maybe go to another school to get more money or whatever they're able to do with that. And I'm just not a fan of it because, once again, you look at college sports. If you look at college basketball, for example, I mean, me growing up in the 80s and the 90s and watching my team play, I would know who was on my team for 4 years. I would know who's playing who, and I'd know their names. Now you look at it on television, you ain't got a clue who's playing. Each and every year changes, and I think you're losing a lot of good college coaches because of that. Because, hey, you talk to your player or you yell at your player now that what they want to do, they want to transfer. So I think it's taking a lot of it away, and now you're starting to see it trickle down at the high school level. Once again, like I said, there's pros and cons to it, and if you're a player, I mean, you can't be mad at them if they want to get money and whatever the situation is. But as a fan, I'm not a big fan of it just because I just think it's changing the game and changing the loyalty of the game, integrity of the game, and I guess it's just me being a little bit selfish.
All right, for Bladen, go ahead, Coach Pate.
I'm sorry. I might misunderstood the question. I'm not for the NIL. But if the question is, what do I see happening? I think it'll pass.
Yeah,
I'm 100% what Brad said. I agree, but I just think
Hey,
it's gonna pass.
I'm here to change the questions. That's what I'm here for.
For Bladen and Sampson County athletes, is there an opportunity for athletes to benefit from NIL? Any idea, Coach Pate or Coach Spell?
Get a bigger Whopper, a free Whopper somewhere at a local business, possibly. I really don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't know if it can do something really big could happen for that individual at a small town, small community. I really don't know the answer to that.
Coach Pate?
I think there is. So, like, when the news broke, remember whenever it broke a couple years ago that they were going to have the NIL in the state? We were playing golf that day, me and my son. My son's a basketball player on the basketball team, and I actually had two individuals that day, that Saturday, who came to me and said, hey, we would like to do something with Jackson. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying it'd be huge. I'm not saying it'd be, $100,000, but I think there is. And then I don't think it'll be huge in Bladen, but, like, think about it. Clinton, Wallace, Lumberton, Whiteville, those places, I think there's instances where it could be very lucrative. Again, I'm not talking about $100,000, but, I could see a kid getting $5,000, $10,000 very easily if it goes through.
Is there a right way to do this then, in your opinion? Obviously, some businesses, Amaris, who was here, or McLaurin, who was at Maryland, and again, athletes with soccer or basketball, Michaela Boykin, if it had been going through years ago, like Clinton when she was playing, businesses I'm sure would have loved to have them endorse or say something for their product. So there's got to be a right way to do this for athletes.
I've thought about this a lot. A, I don't like it, but B, I'm sitting here having a kid, and as a father, even though I'm against this whole deal, if it's on the table, why not capitalize? So the first question I think you have to ask is, will you be allowed to have collectives like they do in college? And that would be huge. I could think in Clinton. I mean, you just think about it. If you were to go around, and Brad, I don't know if this could happen, but there are places it will. If they do, if they're allowed to have collectives, I mean, you think about it, it would not take a whole lot to come together with $100,000 as a collective and then disperse it as you see fit. I don't know. I think collectives would be bad in one sense if you do it, and then, if it's just, Joe off the street has a business and he wants to pay, that there's things there because you don't have to worry about tampering. So I think, it's going to make it's going to be a headache for me and Brad, because I think it's going to have to run through the athletic director, and I think it's going to be just a constant headache. But I really, Coach Salvo, to be honest, I don't know what the right answer is. But there is a right way, but there's going to have to be some oversight if it's allowed to be done.
Yeah, just one extra.
You're gonna see a lot of recruiting.
I was going to do one extra thing on you guys' plate, then that was going to be my last question. We'll have to wrap this up kind of shortly, but a short answer. Obviously, I think that you're going to see some. The negative, obviously, would be recruiting. Coach Bell?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the sad thing about that is you're going to have a team that's already doing well in basketball or football, and they're going to continue to do well because they may have different resources that these other smaller schools may not have, and they may each and every year they're in a state championship or winning a state championship just because they may be able to provide for that special athlete that other schools are not able to do.
Coach Pate, wrap it up.
Well, if you just look locally at Sampson and Bladen, so in Sampson, I would say most of the businesses are in Clinton, around Clinton. And then if you're somewhere like at Union where there are very few businesses and backers, what's going to happen? This kid's coming out of 8th grade. Where's he going to end up? Bladen County, East Bladen, West Bladen. Most of the businesses are Elizabethtown, which is East Bladen country. They have the Campbells. They have the Campbells over there, and we don't. So what's going to happen if we have a kid like Chase Williams coming through in the 8th grade? Where's he going to end up? So I think it's going to be horrible for high school athletics. I really think it will be. But I mean, it's where we're at right now.
Coach Pate, we appreciate your time. Coach Spell, appreciate your time. Two big topics, we're going to hear a lot more coming up here in the next few months, realignment and NIL. Thank you again for your time, gentlemen. We'll be back after these messages for more of Pressbox Chatter.
The Pressbox Chatter brought to you in part by Crumpler Plastic Pipe Incorporated, agricultural drain systems, constructed wetlands, septic sewer drain pipes. For more information, call 910-525-4046 or log on to the website www.cpp-pipe.com.
Back with Pressbox Chatter, brought to you by Crumpler Plastic, Sampson Regional Orthopedic, and the Sampson Independent. Go to clintonnc.com to see the video each week from Pressbox Chatter. Again, joined by Brant Young and Jonathan Griffin. This is Jeff Saul. We're going to transition now a little bit of tennis. This past week, Harrell's now sporting the lone winning record of the four teams that have tennis. They're 5-4. They beat Oakwood and Kerr Vance last week 9-0. They lost a tough one to Epiphany yesterday 5-4. They're hosting Village Christian today, and they're at Wake Prep Academy. They host actually Wayne Prep Academy this Thursday at 3:30. Number one in singles is Emma DeBose. She's 6-1, and Piper Nelson, her number 3 singles, is 5-2. Clinton now is 3-5. They lost 5-4 to North Johnston last week, and then they won their first conference game 9-0 over West Bladen past Thursday. They are off till next Monday when they host Fairmont. That'll be another conference game. Number 4 seed Madison Avery sits at 6-2. Their number 2 doubles, Xana Royal and Lily Williams, are 5-1, and then their number 3 doubles, Madison Avery and Allie Naylor, are 4-2. West Bladen 3-4 now. They lost 2 9-0 contests. Actually, they lost 3 9-0 contests last week, twice to Whiteville, who's 6-1, and then they lost 9-0 to Clinton. They play Fairmont this Wednesday, a conference game at 4 o'clock. They're at Fairmont, and then they host Red Springs next Monday at 4 o'clock. That is a conference game. Faith Wynn is their number 3 singles. She is 3-2. And East Bladen's 1-5. They lost 9-0 to Rosewood last week. They're off until next Tuesday when they host Whiteville. We'll transition now to volleyball, where outstanding performances by county teams continue, and some awful big games this week in volleyball. We'll start with Mintz, who we both saw, Brant and I, last night defeat Clinton. Mintz now a sterling 10-0 on the season.
Yeah, Mintz, I don't know what it is about Mintz. They're a young team. They only have 2 seniors on the team, but as we saw last night, they're undefeated for a reason. I talked to Sheila Davidson after the game, and she was, her typical energetic self, just noting, mistakes that Clinton made and everything. But it was so hard to score a point. And Clinton has that. They have a freshman that's 6 foot and a sophomore that's 5'11", and they were even getting stopped. So Mintz has it all together, and they have a bright future because they have such a young team. But those are 2 very good programs here in the county. Mintz is just on an absolute tear right now. Hasn't lost a set since August 20th.
And I think you mentioned it before, and I've heard it from others too, just the great defense they play, how it is so hard to score on them. They keep the ball alive, and eventually it's the other team who makes a mistake. They've got games coming up. They have Penderley Academy and The Point this Thursday, and then they're at Harrell's, which will be an interesting game. That'll be next Monday. Clinton, with a loss yesterday, fell to 8-2, and this past week they beat Union 3-0 last Tuesday, and then Spring Creek last Wednesday 3-0 before losing yesterday.
Well, you look at Clinton being 8-2; their 2 losses are to Mintz. I mean, otherwise, as long as they don't play Mintz, I mean, they're doing okay, right? I haven't seen Mintz play. I haven't seen Clinton play yet. Saba, what was it you were saying? Mintz last year only lost 1 game, and that was playing in a national tournament.
It's now
or something.
100 since 2017. Mintz is 102 or 103-7.
Well, you talk about that NIL program. Everybody's going to start going to Mintz to play volleyball. if you're good enough, if that gets passed, if Mintz can get you to go there to play volleyball, that's the place to go. Apparently,
Clinton's got a nice blend though of upperclassmen and lowerclassmen.
Yep.
And so and Sheila Davison does an excellent job with them. They have a big one this Thursday. It starts Southeastern Athletic Conference play. They will be at Midway.
That'll be a big crowd.
And then they'll host East Bladen. Yeah, will be. And they'll host East Bladen non-conference next Monday. But at Midway this Thursday, it'll be a big volleyball game there.
Things always get a little nasty between those schools when they tend to rotate home and homes during volleyball. You wouldn't think it was just be football, but no, basketball, anything, baseball.
It was a packed house last night at Clinton High with Mintz and Clinton.
Yeah.
Midway now 4-3 on the season, but don't let that record belie you. They defeated Cape Fear last Wednesday, when they lost to them 3-2 August 19th. They come back and win 3-0 last week, and then they lose yesterday 3-1 to Harnett Central. Harnett Central, though, 9-2 on the season. And so Midway will be Clinton's first conference opponent, but before that, Midway's got another game coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, they play 8-0 Wallace Rose Hill. They're on the road for that one. I dubbed this the volleyball gauntlet because they play Wallace Rose Hill tomorrow, Clinton Thursday, and then back at Harnett Central on Monday. So they have 3 tough games coming up, but if there's a coach that I have confidence in, it's Susan Clark. I think she gets that team rolling. I think we see better volleyball out of them during this stretch.
They're not, well, again, Clinton will be this Thursday. They're not going to face any tougher competition. You talk about somebody preparing a team for conference play by playing tough non-conference. Coach Clark does that. Cade Moran, number 1 in the conference in kills. And Ella Clark is number 1 in the conference right now for assists. Peyton Herring and Samantha Carter, 2nd in conference with blocks, total blocks. Other big team to talk about, Hopton. They are now 8-0, surpassed last year's win total. They won last week 3-0 against Jones Tuesday, and then they beat the American Alliance Academy of Johnson County 3-1 last Thursday. And so Hopton 8-0. Talked with Coach Jones a little bit last week. His big tests are coming tonight and Thursday, though, for him.
I tell you, when you look at it, they play tonight at 9-2 Rosewood, and then at 7-4 Noose Charter on Thursday. And you know, Coach Jones has been doing this a long time. I saw him at Pizza Inn last night. He was probably checking out the coach's show.
He's a regular there.
Yeah, he was a regular at Pizza Inn. But I don't know. NIL money from Pizza Inn going out to Hopton. We're just joking after listening to that segment. But he's done a great job with Hopton. You know, I tell you, it sounds like Sampson County is, you know, we focus so much. This is why we wanted to do this show, because we focus so much on Friday nights and stuff about football. But the soccer teams in the counties are doing good. It may be a volleyball county. I mean, look at all the county teams that are just. I mean, Hopton 8-0. You mentioned Midway 4-3, but in crazy tough schedule. Clinton's 8-2. Mintz is 10-0. You know, I mean, it's just pretty tough teams there in volleyball in the county.
Zanahare is number 2 in the conference and serving aces for Hopton. And again, Hopton this year has won 24 sets and dropped only 2. But by Thursday of this week, they'll have a much better idea. Rosewood and Noose Charter have been the standard bearers for this conference the past few years.
If she's not getting served in soccer, won't you stand on the other side of the net and let her serve?
I'm not going to do that. Nope, I know my place. As Clint Eastwood said, a man's got to know his limitations.
He doesn't do too well on hardwood floors and flip-flops. So,
a man's got to know his limitations.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll transition to Bladen County now. East Bladen is now 4-4. They lost last Tuesday at East Columbus 3-1. They did beat Pender last Thursday 3-1. So again, they're 4-4. They host Trask today, and then there's a conference game. First conference game at 6 o'clock at East, and that's at East Bladen. They'll be at West Columbus then Thursday at 6 o'clock, and then they're at Clinton next Monday.
Yeah, Miriam Devan, number 1 in the conference for hitting percentage at over 500% or 500 there, and then Taylor Dallas, number 2, also. And so they've got and Millie Toller, they've got 3, you know, very very talented players on their team. Coming up, that Clinton East Bladen matchup should be an interesting one if they can get through Trask, and then look like they'll take care of West Columbus. That matchup against Clinton on Monday should be a big one.
West Bladen checks in at 4-0. They defeated Union last Thursday 3-0. Their next game is this Thursday. They will start conference play at St. Paul's, who is 1-6. So a chance maybe to get off on a good mark in conference play. I think the way it looks, West Bladen probably your third best team in the Southeastern Athletic Conference. Harrell's at 4-7 now. They lost 3-1 to the Southeastern Homeschool last Wednesday. They lost 3-2 to Curvance on Thursday. They won yesterday. They're beating Epiphany 3-1, and they host Mintz now next Monday, which should be an interesting matchup. Mintz at Harrell's. That'll be at 5:15 on Monday.
I see the Southeastern Homeschool. Is that like all the moms get together and they just?
Better watch now. That's out of Wilmington. Izzy Bradshaw, Mary Willow Rumbold, and Riley Dixon among the conference leaders in kills, assists, and serving aces and digs. Boy, when you get the stats now, volleyball has stats all over the place.
I don't understand how they do it, man.
Lakewood 1-7 by Bryce Brand. He was up there keeping them live yesterday on his phone while the match was going on. Lakewood 1-7 right now, and Union checks in at 0-10. And the thing is, they're playing tonight at Lakewood. So one of the teams is going to start off with a winning record in conference play, but both teams have struggled here, obviously, early on. That's our volleyball roundup. We'll be back with cross country and soccer to wrap things up here on Pressbox Chatter.
The Pressbox Chatter brought to you in part by Crumpler Plastic Pipe Incorporated, agricultural drain systems, constructed wetlands, septic sewer drain pipes. For more information, call 910-525-4046 or log on to the website www.cpp-pipe.com.
Welcome back to Pressbox Chatter, brought to you by Crumpler Plastic, Sampson Regional Orthopedic, and the Sampson Independent. Go to clintonnc.com to see the video from each week's show. We're live every Tuesday on Oldies 1170 AM while we're still on air until the sun gets a little later in the year.
Yeah.
Always though on oldies1170.com, the Mixler app, and we're on Star Communication Channel 16. And after us will be J.W. Simmons, then followed by At the Table with Sydney Knowles, and then a replay of the Johnny Borkin Coaches Show. So it's a good Tuesday on Star 16. Real quick, we'll run into cross country, no pun intended there. Last week, rim shot there. Last week, Clinton actually had a first conference match for the Southeastern Athletic Conference, and for the guys, Clinton won first place. Javius Logan was third overall, Will Johnson fourth, and Eric Batista came in sixth. For Midway, Lucas Wilson was fifth, and Chase Jackson was eighth. West Bladen, DeMonte Love was the first place overall finisher, followed by Paul Morales in ninth and William Yandell in 10th. And for the women, Midway took first place. Amy Rios was first overall. Mary Nora was fourth. Alondra Acosta was sixth. Addison Jackson 8th, and Kylie Ives was 10th. So you get 5 of the top 10 runners in the conference. That's pretty good standing there. For the dark horses, Ruby Davila was second. Haley Mathis was third, and Evan Gillespie was fifth. They have their next meet tomorrow at Fairmont. That's at 3 o'clock. And Hopton, Union, and Lakewood are running today at News Charter, and that was a 4:30 match there. We'll try to get all those results next week.
I give all the credit to everybody that wants to do cross country, because I would not get excited about going to compete in running. Look like, hey, we're just going to go run, and if you win, you get them. Hey, good job.
Kudos to them.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, it's a team. Obviously, your team wants your team to do well. But the one thing about cross country and track, it's also an individual event where I can go out and see how my times can get better.
Sure, yeah.
Like I was talking texting Coach Lockamy, who provided me a lot of the results with West Bladen and Midway's results. Give me the top 10 finishers. But then if there's also somebody who's maybe not finishing in the top 10, but whose times have really improved, we're going to mention them on the air too.
Yeah, sounds good. Like I said, they get a ton of credit from me, a lot of respect from me.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, but in general, and
a lot of them use it for cross country or for track distance in the spring, or a lot of the women's soccer players used to run cross country.
Well, Gillespie and Ruby for Clinton, they play basketball, so this helps get them in shape for basketball.
Let's transition to soccer now. And Clinton won a big one last night. They are now 8-0 on the season. They beat East Bladen 8-0 last Tuesday. Last night, though, they won a 3-1 decision, probably their best win of the year over a very good James Keenan team.
Yeah, my thing is, you look at Max Preps has got them a 43 team in the state. They're number 4 in 2A. Who are the other 3 teams that are higher than them is what I want to know. They're playing good soccer right now. They're outscoring opponents 46-4.
Yeah, the issue with that, though, they've actually dropped in the rankings, and I forgot to update them fully. They were around number 20-something last week is their strength of schedule.
Well, they've played. Seems like they'll play anybody for the most part.
Some of the teams,
the conference is not good.
Well, you schedule tough out of conference, but then you did that last year. And so far this year, some of the teams maybe haven't performed up to expectation that you've played. And so they've got some big games coming. They've got undefeated Wallace. They've got Greenville Rose coming in. So they've got some big ones coming. Yesterday in a 3-1 win, Chris Zalea, Oscar Adaziak, and Griffin Williams were all their goal scorers. And Griffin leads the team with 10 goals, and Oscar has 8 goals coming in. Louis Bartolome is the goaltender for the Dark Horses yesterday. Has been doing a good job. Garrison Hill also got some action last week against East Bladen. They host Croatan this Thursday, which should be a good game at 6:30, and they're at North Lenore next Monday. Their biggest conference competition will come from Midway. Midway won yesterday. They're now 6-2. They lost last Tuesday. Stupin 2-1. They beat Union 10-2, and they beat Lakewood 9-0. Again, the Raiders sit at 6-2.
Yeah, they're outscoring opponents Salvo 37-13, and Jaden Espino Diaz is number 3 in the conference with 4 assists. They play Lakewood on Monday, who they beat 9-0 the night before. Isn't it true in soccer? Is it 9 or 10 they stop the game? And
9.
It's like, yeah, 9. They just stop the game.
And they host Union this Wednesday at 6:30. Lakewood 3-3-1 after last night's defeat. They also lost last Thursday to Pender 5-2. They play at West Columbus. That's non-conference this Thursday at 5, and again they're at Midway, as Jonathan mentioned, next Monday at 6:30. Lakewood though sits now 3-3-1.
When you look at moving on into the conference, you go Hopton 4-4-1. So some teams in the conference have got those ties under their belt. I've always hated soccer with the ties. Yeah, somebody's a winner and somebody's a loser. I mean, come on.
And again, that record, like Midway's volleyball record, Hopton's soccer record, belies really how good they are. They've lost 2 to Wallace, who we mentioned is undefeated.
Yeah.
They lost to Jordan Matthews up at the NCAA soccer Classic in August. They beat Princeton past Wednesday 5-1, and then they beat East Bladen yesterday in a very back-and-forth game. They beat East Bladen at East Bladen 5-4 down there. They're at North Johnson this Thursday, and then they host that American, the ALAJ group out of Johnson County. The American Leadership Academy of Johnson County. There,
you say that enough, you'll start to just roll off the tongue.
So Hopton at 4-4-1. These are all non-conference games again. And I mentioned Midway being a challenge for the Dark Horses in conference. They were last year. West Bladen, though, sitting now at 5-1 in conference, non-conference action so far. They're in the Dark Horse Conference with Midway. They won 2-0 over East Columbus. They're at South Columbus today at 6 o'clock. And their leading goal scorers are Aiden Ross and Kevin De La Cruz Liba. And Dylan Hernandez has been in goal, and he was in the goal for the shutout, their 2-0 win over East Columbus.
You know, the interesting thing, and shout out to Brant for putting these stats together, or else I would have nothing to add. But but you look at this, and they lost their very first week, and they haven't lost since. So they're on a 5-game winning streak right now. So West Bladen has found their groove since their opening loss. Do you know who their opening loss was against?
I should have put that on here, but I did not.
That gives you something to work on next week.
Yeah. I think a lot of that has to do with Dylan Hernandez, number 1 in the conference with 1.167 goals against average and 33 saves. I think he's, a brick wall back there.
You got quality goaltending that can carry you a long way in soccer. East Bladen now 2-4. They lost again the tough one to Hopton yesterday 5-4. They also lost 8-0 to Clinton last Tuesday. They play at South Columbus Wednesday at 5 o'clock, then at East Columbus next Monday at 5:30.
So when we look at Harrell's 4-4 in soccer. They're outscoring opponents 28-16. They beat Epiphany 6-2 last night. I always think that's funny. It's like, hey, just come up with the name Epiphany.
They're on a 3-game win streak now. They beat Oakwood 2 last Wednesday 5-2. Then Kerr Vance 10-1 last Thursday. They beat Epiphany.
They're about to find out, though.
Yeah, 6-0
Fayetteville Academy. They're going to find out what they got next game as they play them.
Next Tuesday, actually, a week from today. Against Oakwood, Zavi Guzman, an 8th grader, had 2 goals and 1 assist. And then Josiel Marquez, Alex Trejo, and Caleb Curvin all had goals in that win.
So you can play up in 8th grade. That's cool.
At Harrell's and the private schools, you can't. Same thing at Mintz and all that.
The rules are different.
Adrian Marquis had 2 goals and 4 assists in winning. Kerr Vance and Trey Bryan had 3 goals for Harrell's as they defeated Kerr Vance 10-1 last Thursday. And lastly, then we'll check in with Union. Union sitting at 1-6. They lost 10-2 to Midway last Wednesday and 6-1 to Trask last Thursday. They're at Midway this Wednesday at 6:30, and then they go to 71st next Monday over in Fayetteville. All right, and that is our soccer update. We're back to kind of recap and kind of give you the top games coming up here this next week here on Pressbox Chatter.
The Pressbox Chatter brought to you in part by Crumpler Plastic Pipe Incorporated, agricultural drain systems, constructed wetlands, septic sewer drain pipes. For more information, call 910-525-4046 or log on to the website www.cpp-pipe.com.
I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to Pressbox Chatter Week 2. We'll be back next Tuesday for the 3rd edition. It's brought to you by Crumpler Plastic, Sampson Regional Orthopedic, and the Sampson Independent. Go to clintonnc.com to see the video each week. Some big games coming up in football. As Brant mentioned, the game of the year maybe in Lakewood will be at Midway. and Harrells will be at Mount Zion Academy, 2-2-1 teams there. Soccer this Thursday, CHS will host Croatan. That'll be at 6:30. The horses are 8-0. Volleyball, I think, is where the action is. Clinton will be at Midway this Thursday. Mintz will be at Harrells on Monday. Midway will be at Harnett Central next Monday. And Hopton tonight is at Rosewood and then at News Charter this Thursday. Big action. We'll be here next week to recap it all for you. Thanks for tuning in to Pressbox Chatter. Ooh.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you at the ball game.
The Pressbox Chatter Show on WCLN is brought to you in part by the Sampson Independent. Don't forget to tune in every Tuesday at 6 for the latest broadcast on 1170 AM, Star TV Channel 16.